Now we're gonna go to the next topic. We got somebody in the queue. Get ready to bring them in.
Okay.
So there's been an interesting discussion about the current NBA and the older NBA. They've been telling the current guys to watch the old NBA. I want you to introduce to others. My brother James Axel. How you living today, man?
Hey, what's going on, family? How you?
Oh, feeling pretty good, man. Like interested to get this topic going because they're not fans of the 80s and 90s at all. And I usually fight a
Done with the
losing battle.
90s.
So, huh?
We done with the 90s. Yo, I been seeing that everywhere. We done with the 80s, yo.
So I'm gonna fill you in real quick, James. On Twitter, basically, a lot of Jordan fans have been discrediting LeBron, and it's been a discussion. So a lot of Gen Z people have been looking up old highlights, and millennials have been looking up old highlights of Dr. J not being able to go left and different things like that. So it's been a back and forth battle.
We'll see Dr. J. Talk MJ. No, we ain't talking about Dr. J. That was too long ago. We talking about MJ, your GOAT.
So he doesn't believe he's the GOAT. He's not an MJ fan at all. You don't like LeBron at all. I'm not going to say everything that we've discussed, but
hold on, time out. You say I don't like LeBron.
You don't.
No, you don't.
Come on.
You're his biggest hater. Now you're one of them. You're in the top 5.
When he left Miami,
I got him number 2 on my all-time list. How could I hate him?
How is he
He's
not
in my top
1?
2.
How is he not number 1? Like, I don't even like LeBron, but he's number 1. He's the greatest basketball player the world has ever seen and will see for an extended period of time. There is no way. I refuse. No. Number 2. What makes him number 2?
Well, his career achievements are incredible. Having a career triple-double, that's crazy. But I think a lot of it is he's a compiler. Over these 20 years, he's compiled a lot of stats. I'll put it to you like this. He's had the best career. You know, you can't argue that. Statistically, he's definitely had the best career. But the greatest player that I've seen with my eyes, the best way I can put it to you, me being an old head, if we're talking hip hop, right? Drake has had the best career of any rapper that we've ever witnessed.
Of all time. Yeah, he's the greatest artist of all time. Like, he's the greatest artist of all time. Like, you can't take away what he's done. Like, you can't. You put Drake on a song with anybody, that person that he's on the song with, he could take Tajon out his room right now, make a song with him. Tajon is known. Tajon is on right then and there. That's why Drake is the greatest. Drake has the.
What was your point? I can't go for the Drake talk. What was your point, James?
So with LeBron, his numbers are the greatest that we've seen, but you have to look at the other circumstances behind that. He's his first 7-8 years in Cleveland were rough. You know what I mean? But the last 12, 13 years of his career, he's always played with one of, if not the best team. And he just hasn't gotten it done a lot of times.
You just said Michael Jordan's career just now. You literally just
no.
Jordan
They got it out the mud. They got it out the mud. It was
who got it out the mud? Michael Jordan was poop his first however many years. Then he started playing with Scottie Pippen and started winning. He ain't win nothing without Scottie Pippen. Don't say that. And he was on the best team in the league.
You got to admit that. Nah, the Bulls were the best team. There was no other roster. And when you were there, and before the season started, you knew they had the Bulls number 1 every year, best roster. They never had
Bulls. They don't go 73-9, not being the best.
They went 73-9 because they lost the year before to the Orlando Magic, who had a young Shaq, had a young Penny, had a Horace Grant. Are we going to say that wasn't a squad?
That was.
That's a good team.
That is.
And they didn't win the chip that year. They lost to a Houston Rockets team who had a Hakeem Olajuwon, a Clyde Drexler, Penny.
They don't like Clyde.
Don't do that. I
told them Clyde averaged 25 a game in that final
series.
Let's
bring the facts out. How old was Clyde Drexler?
He averaged 25 a game in that series.
When was the last time he had hair? Yeah, like I'm not doing that. No, we not going off that. No, not at all.
Okay.
I refuse.
So let me
The Magic lost because they were young. That's why the Magic lost. Shaq wasn't seasoned. Shaq didn't know what he was doing.
Okay. Okay. No, I don't argue that. He was definitely a young Shaq. But what I will say is this: as an old head, I think that we can recognize the talent that the younger generation has. It's undeniable, the skill set, especially from the bigs. That's what's the most impressive to me, is to see the 6'9", 6'10" and up do what they're able to do. Like Wemby's bag is ridiculous. He's gonna be. It's not even gonna be fun to watch the NBA in a couple years. But what I think there's a lack of respect from the young bulls when it comes to paying homage to what those 80s and 90s players did. Because go ahead, bro.
My only rebuttal to that is the 80s and 90s players always talk down on this generation.
That's what we're saying.
So
like,
they don't respect. Basketball soft. They're not
it
as
goes
good.
both ways.
They
Like,
don't even.
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you one person above. It's hard to find people above 50 that still watch NBA. Like they're so stuck on back then. It's like they don't respect it now.
Mid-range.
So why would we respect it back then?
Open layups and mid-range jumpers and occasional fist fights without fines. That's what they want to watch. They don't want to watch.
Yeah, it's better basketball, better players.
They don't want to watch people get in their bag and do a step back. They see that, they're like, oh, come on. They're just out here doing tricks. Like, you know,
that's
like,
a travel.
Yeah, that's a travel. There's this,
Mhm.
like, y'all, that's different. And like every time I go back and watch, like, because I literally had to, because I couldn't hate on Michael Jordan without watching. Every time I go back and watch, it's like they don't play defense. And I be looking for this like lockdown defense. Everybody swears that they played back then. It does not exist.
I want James' rebuttal. I see his face. What's your rebuttal, James?
No, I think the defense was definitely better than it is now. Like now, I'm one of those people. I'm struggling to watch a game because I feel like 50, 60% of the games are blowouts. It's a coin flip. Every time I go to watch a game now, the teams are getting blown out, and by the third quarter, I'm on to the next game. I think it's too much friendliness. You know, with the young boys growing up with AAU, everybody's cool with each other, everybody knows each other, and they low-key treat the regular season like the All-Star games. They go hard, but they're not really going hard. Back then, the players, they didn't have that camaraderie. They respected each other. They might go golfing in the off season, but the fist fights you talked about, the hand checking, the flagrant fouls, that's because they were trying to win. I remember my favorite player of all time is AI. I remember the first year they made the playoffs and he lost. He was on the bench crying like a baby. It's on YouTube. You could probably find it. He was just bawling his eyes out because he cared. Now you don't see that anymore.
And B was crying.
And B cry. B cry every year.
And we say he don't care. We think like he's one of them guys.
Every year.
He cries every time.
That's
every year. But we're not gonna talk about
I get what you're saying about that,
Allen Iverson. We're not gonna talk about that inconsistent guy. You said that automatically.
My only rebuttal to what you're saying, James, about the regular season, I blame the Michael Jordan media because they always bring up the 6 rings and like, oh, if you don't win rings, you haven't accomplished anything. So it's like, perfect example, Carmelo Anthony. He's a 9th all-time scorer in NBA history. Because he didn't have great playoff success, people diminish his career, act like he never accomplished anything. I don't think that's fair.
I mean,
like certain guys.
I'm a Melo fan. I can't argue Melo. I can't really get into no Melo arguments. If that person has a ring, I'm out. That's how it is. I'm out. If I get into an argument like you like, I can't really get into any Melo debates because if that person has a ring, I lost. There's nothing for me to say.
Like
no finals MVP, like anything like that. There's nothing. He hasn't even
like
been
you can
to
have
the
a great
final.
career without a ring. That's what I think.
Yeah, that's
I feel like,
but you can't get behind it though. Like you can have don't get me wrong, he had a great career, but when it comes to debates, putting him over this guy, putting this guy over that guy, you got to stay out of it. You know,
that's why I say that about Michael Jordan. Every time somebody brings up them 6 rings, I ask them, who else has 6 rings? Scottie Pippen. He didn't do it by himself. Like that's why
Jordan will say that
ring talk does not matter to me, especially against that competition. I looked up exactly who they went up against the playoffs in the finals, bro. You can't even name 80% of the people on some of the teams that they played. You can name 2 people, the rest you can't even name the starting lineups on some of the teams that they played. Like the competition was bad. Like You have the best shooting guard in the game, and you have the best small forward in the game, and you have a top 5 power forward in the game on your team. I know he wasn't there every single time they won, but you can't diminish that. Jordan didn't do anything without Pippen before Pippen got there, and he didn't do anything after he stopped playing with Pippen. So that's why I don't understand. They bring up them rings, they bring up that Jordan didn't do. He did diddly squat after that whole thing.
He doesn't have a carry. He doesn't have like a carry ring.
He never had
a carry job. He doesn't have that.
He averaged 41 against the Suns. I can't go for that.
You said what?
He averaged 41 points per game against the Suns in '93 in the finals.
Who was guarding him?
Dan Marley, who was an all-defensive player at the time.
Bro, nobody knows who that is. Like, you see what I mean? You're naming nobodies. Like,
he was an all-star. Like, y'all don't know him.
An all-star. Mike Conley was an all-star. Like, bro, can we stop it? You gotta stop saying that all-star thing. You know how many people
Thunder Dan?
Yeah, I'm gonna let James talk because he was around Jordan times. I'll let him.
Well, no. I'm gonna step back from Jordan for a second, and I want to zoom out, and I want to ask y'all. I want to get all y'all opinions on this. I was thinking about this earlier today. So it's a lot of 80s and 90s. Well, first of all, I got to say this. Basketball is basketball. I hate to hear Gen Z talk as if this generation has somehow remixed the game, as if the rim is higher. The rim is still 10 feet. The dimensions of the court are still the same. I hate when, I'll give you a perfect example. I got 13 years on Jeff. That's my brother. And I think I want to say the first time you beat me in one-on-one was I was 39-38. I was close to 40. And so you could do the step backs, you could do all the Steph Curry shooting you want, and I'm playing 80s ball, but at the end of the day, I was still getting it done. So this narrative, I'm not here to argue that Clyde Drexler is better than James Harden, but I am saying that basketball is basketball and hoopers are gonna hoop.
Yeah, I get that, but the game has evolved. They're not the same. Like even AI said all he had with his left hand was a crossover. That crossover to his left hand, that's all he had. He came out and said that. That's that. After he played everything, retired, he's done. He said, all I had with my left hand was that crossover. His whole career, that one crossover and switch back to his other hand. That now, they would walk in and see Kyrie Irving dribbling and untuck their jersey and walk off the court. They would think that is witchcraft.
Yo, don't act like nobody had handles back then. We're not doing
it.
You know,
right. Come on, man.
No, it's different. The whole starting lineup can dribble. The whole starting lineup is bringing the ball down the court. The whole starting lineup can dribble. Back then, you had specialty guys.
But it's a different level now. Like, the game has evolved. That's what stuff does. It evolves. The longer it is, the more people learn different things. They do different things. Like, bro, if one of them, who'd you just say was guarding Jordan in that finals that was on the Suns?
Thunder
Dan Marley.
Dan Martin?
Dan Marley.
Whoever that is, if he guarded, think about him trying to stay in front of Steph Curry. That's not
it'll be problematic, but like it goes both ways.
Problematic. It would be a slaughter.
He can't even guard Wizards Jordan Poole.
That's what I'm saying. He couldn't guard Wizards Jordan. Like, you get what I mean? People at the end of the bench now would cook back then. Because of stuff that, like, you get what I mean? Like, they have people that can do different things. The game has revolutionized. That's why we say now it's 10 times better than back then. Because you could do the same thing. Back then, you could settle for just pull up mid-ranges, layups, set off screens. And then on top of that, back then, you couldn't weak side help. They in the paint, if you come down, they can't slide over and block the shot. That's not a thing. They gotta let you go. Like that's why there's a difference. And then they're not shooting from 40 feet back. They've never seen that. No one has ever seen. The game is revolutionized. People are backed up.
James got a rebuttal real quick. I'm gonna let him. I see his face right now.
Yeah, it's a couple things. First, shooting from 40 feet, that's impressive, but it's still only 3 points. The second thing is with AI, you talk about he could only go one way with his crossover. Teams knew that then, but they still couldn't stop it. It's not, and then also
you couldn't help.
They put a zone in the league to try to stop him, and low key they took away his crossover. They started calling it for carrying. His first year in the league, he was burning everybody, and nobody could do anything with him. So imagine whoever your favorite player is, they take away his number one move. Then they implement a zone.
My favorite player is Paul George. You take away his number one move, he has 15 counters. There's a difference. Like there's a
how many rings?
Difference.
How many rings does he have with them 15 counters?
Bro, you see what I mean? He brings the rings. Is ring not a team? Is ring not a team award? Is a championship not a team award? He didn't do that.
Has he been on good teams?
He didn't go 1v5.
He's been on great teams. Has he been
on good teams?
He has been on good teams, but there's better teams to play against now. It's not just, there's one team in it. Like the best we had to that was the Warriors, and the other teams behind the Warriors were fighting. And the Warriors, they didn't even, like, you know what I mean? That dynasty isn't the dynasty anymore. They had to go pick up KD so they could be clearly better than everybody else. Like, it's harder now. There's more teams. You can go on each and every team and pick people that are really good. Besides, like,
so you think it was only one team back then?
One team that stood high above all.
Yeah,
now,
Bulls were getting a 7-game series with the Knicks. We're not about to do that. No, we're not about to do that.
The Bulls weren't the favorite every season.
They were the favorite, but they had to work for each title. Saying. They didn't have like a cakewalk.
Nobody's saying that, but they were the overwhelming favorite every year. There was no team.
They had to go. They had to go on their team. Any team would be the overwhelming favorite.
They were a super team.
But
that's what we're trying to say.
We had the best team. Let's say we got the GOAT of our generation, LeBron James. He's on the team, and that team ain't even the best team. That's what I'm saying. There's a difference. There's a difference in
they're saying it's more parity. That's what they're saying.
Like there's more.
I get the point.
Like back then,
but I got a point. I want to
Michael Jordan. Like, back then there's only Michael Jordan. I'm not saying no. I'm saying like Michael Jordan's in a league of his own. That's what I'm saying. LeBron's in a league of his own, but it doesn't really matter. Curry in a league of his own, but it doesn't matter because the other teams can still compete because everybody has people on their team that can do remotely the same thing. But Michael Jordan, he was way more athletic than everybody else. He would blow by. He was faster. But I'm gonna let he got his buckets. He was faster. He would jump higher. He would just do different stuff. Now we got 5 people on the same team that can do the same thing.
Like I'm gonna let James go real quick. I'm gonna let him go.
2 things, and Jeff, you and I, we talked about this before. I think one of the problems that old heads have with this newer version is everybody plays the same. Everybody's game is the same. There's not that individuality that you had back in the 80s and the 90s. You could see the heavy James Harden, Steph Curry influence. That's no shade to their games because I like them. They're cold, but I don't like the lack of originality. But the main point that I wanted to make for all this 80s slander, for all this early 90s slander, I thought, this year the Olympics is coming up. Team USA is going to put together a squad. The 92 Dream Team will smoke the 2024 team. If you go player for player, look at the lineup. We can do this.
Yes, and we will. We can. I will 100% do. When that happens, we can get back on the podcast and compare player to player, and I will tell you exactly why every player that is on that team is better than somebody that's on that team. The only person.
So who do you think's getting picked?
What I've seen, it was Bron, KD, Tatum, Embiid, Drew Holiday, Devin Booker.
Drew Holiday, out of all the people you named, Drew Holiday's the only one that's like
he's like the weak link, yeah.
There's like 28 finalists. Like you should look it up.
Embiid's not American. He's from Cameroon.
Yeah.
What are we doing?
We needed help with the big man though.
What are we doing? That's a cheat code. That's a cheat code right there.
No, Hakeem played for Team USA in 96.
That's what I'm about to say. Hakeem played.
I said 92. We're talking because I want to focus on the 80s players. The 92 team was players that were largely great in the 80s and were still good in the 90s. So what I'm saying is if we look at Michael Jordan, if we look at Larry Bird, if we look at Magic, if we look at Patrick Ewing, Charles Barkley, Karl Malone, John Stockton.
Yeah, Magic and Bird were old by then. Like they weren't that packed.
You're naming people that can't hang. You take Larry Bird and compare him. Larry Bird, compare him to Jason Tatum. 2 different levels. Even though
Larry Bird in prime was cold.
You're right. You're right.
I get he's cold, but he's not. Even Larry Bird in his prime can't hang with Jason Tatum right now.
You're wrong. You're wrong on that. You're wrong on that. You're wrong on that. Look, you're wrong, Darius. No.
Bro.
And I'm a Tatum fan. No, sir. No, sir.
Bro.
Yo, that man averaged 24, 10, and 7 for his career. And in his last 3 years, he had a bad back. Like, Bird was elite, all defensive player. Like,
he wouldn't be an all defensive player now, is what I'm trying to say.
You know, he was 6'10", right? He was doing all that at 6'10". Like,
anything.
They compare your favorite player, Jokic, to Bird.
And he's 6'8". Stop calling him 6'10". He's 6'8".
Bird was really.
He's 6'8". Let's not try to give people inches now. He's 6'8".
So Jason Tatum, prime Tatum is better than prime Bird. That's what you're telling me.
That the thing is, Jason Tatum is. We don't even know if Jason Tatum's in his prime. That's the problem. Jason Tatum right now is cooking every single person back then. You can name anybody, and Jason Tatum is giving them hell and clamping all of them too.
Honestly, I don't think that 92 team is better than the 2012 team. I just looked up the 2012 roster. They had Bron, Carmelo, Kobe, Chris Paul, Darren Williams, Kevin Durant, Russell Westbrook, Kevin Love.
That's what I'm saying. And
James Harden, Iguodala, Tyson Chandler, and Anthony Davis.
But again, that's not the point I'm making. We're talking about today's current NBA versus 80s and 90s, right?
Yeah.
That's why you brought me up. And so what I'm saying is that 92 Dream Team, if we put them against the top 12 American players that are playing, I'm not counting Embiid because he's from Cameroon.
Embiid doesn't even have to play, and they're still better.
No. Y'all are 6 deep. And then you want to talk about Bird being old. We're not going to talk about LeBron. He's old.
And Bron at this level is better than Bird in his last year.
Name one person ever to play at anywhere even remotely close to the level LeBron's at his age.
Year 21.
Yeah, cut that
Nobody.
out. I don't want to
You're
hear
17.
That's what I'm saying.
Right.
You're 17.
You can't even. You can cut half the year, some of the year down.
I got one word for y'all. Balco. He on that Balco.
This dude here, man.
Yeah.
But I don't know, man. That 2024 Olympics, like 92 was a really, really, really good team. I don't know. I agree with them as far as the big men being more talented. I agree with you as far as like passion not being the same. But like I said, I think the media played a part. They brought up Jordan so much. And like I said yesterday on my Twitter, the NBA is the only sport that brings up somebody from 20 plus years ago in everyday combo today. Like think about it in the NFL. Yeah, like you bring up like with Patrick Mahomes, how he's cooking right now. Imagine if he had to hear all the time, yo, Joe Montana got 5 rings. You ain't Joe Montana, you ain't got 5 rings.
Because that's a difference. That's what I'm saying.
NBA does that though. Like as soon as Jordan won his first ring, like they left him alone. They said something like, oh yeah, he ain't got as much as Bird and Magic, but they weren't harassing him every time he won a championship. Bron has 4 of them. He has to hear about how he's not better than somebody that retired 20 years ago every single day. He gets 40,000 points, and on Twitter, somebody's going to say LeBron doesn't have signature shots like Jordan. But then we had to be like, hold on. LeBron has the most playoff game winners in NBA history. Like, what are you talking about? So that's the thing. Like, it's such a lack of respect during LeBron's tenure. Like, we watched The Last Dance. We saw how much people, like, loved and appreciated Jordan. But with LeBron, he got to hear all the time, oh, you ain't this guy. Imagine Jordan having here, yo, you ain't Dr. J. Like, Dr. J, like, he had brought people out. Like, it was no national TV. You had to come to see Dr. J. Like,
you ain't David Thompson. You wasn't David Thompson. David Thompson, he was doing that before Jordan. You don't hear that. You don't hear that at all. But if you put Michael Jordan to guard LeBron James, he is getting bullied, tossed around, and dogged out.
Yo, you do know that Udonis Haslem has a podcast, right? Him and
yeah.
And you know, he said just last week that D Wade and LeBron played 1-on-1 and D Wade won the game. He said LeBron was the best teammate he's ever had, but when he played D Wade 1-on-1, D Wade got that. If D Wade, a 6'4" D Wade beat LeBron, what do you think Jordan would do to LeBron 1-on-1? That's child abuse. Come on, man. What we talking about? And I gotta say this, because nobody else is gonna say it. I think a lot of reasons why the old heads is turned off is because the young American players are entitled and they're immature. They got all the talent in the world, but When you look at Zion Williamson, he should be dominating. When you look at Ja Morant, he should be the face of the league. When you look at Anthony Edwards, he should be the face of the league. The young boys now, they don't have that same want it like Kobe had. They don't have that same drive like LeBron. LeBron came in saying, I'm going to be that dude. I want to be the GOAT. These young players now, they don't have that, and that's why a lot of people check out.
Because they're better. They're better than they were back then. It was no, like I'm saying, back then, LeBron could say he's gonna come in and be the GOAT. He can at that time, he could come in and be better than anybody else just off of physical attributes. He jumps.
No, he put in the work though.
Yeah, that's what I'm not saying he didn't. I didn't say he didn't put in the work, but now what they're doing, what people were doing to try to get up there, they're doing it now in high school, middle school. You see, Jeff, you coached them. I know you've seen some little kids with a bag that you was like, hold on, yo, what's going on? Stuff like that. They're better now. They know how to put the ball up in different ways that nobody really thought about.
James is talking about mentality, though. Like, we're acknowledging the talent.
Mentality wise, I guess that's like that. I'll take that.
It's real. It's real. Like,
I'll take that. They don't have the same mentality because they all can do it now. That's what I'm saying. Back then, it was more rare for somebody to come out and jump out the gym or be that big and be able to move like that. Now it's like, bro, we see people that had the same skill set as Michael Jordan all the time. Like, I know Michael Jordan's mentality was different, but if we're talking about playing basketball, there's a lot of people that do the same thing. That's why I say that same thing every single time, that DeMar DeRozan could go back and be the same thing as Michael Jordan. They have the same skill set. I'm not saying... Right, I'm not saying he's a greater player than Michael Jordan. No, Michael Jordan's a greater player, especially for his time, for his generation, yes. But that now, if he brought that in this generation, it would be underappreciated. Nobody would care because we see it all the time.
Jordan got his numbers with terrible spacing. If you put Jordan in 5-out offense,
they couldn't help. They could not help. No one could help.
Yeah, you're still getting one-on-one matchups. None of that double team stuff.
That spacing did not matter.
But the lanes are wider,
you didn't need a center.
Yeah, once you get by your man, that's 2 points. Once you get by your man, you got a center right there.
Yeah,
then
you couldn't even double.
The power forward helps. Like, it's different.
That you couldn't help off and double. That's not a thing. That would be against the rules. They would be shooting free throws. Now,
so the spacing
back
thing.
then, you didn't have to have a center that could shoot the ball. You didn't have to have that type of spacing. But now you do, because they have somebody that can slide over and toss. They have a 7-footer that can slide over and toss your shot. That's why it's harder. Like, it's harder. But I get what you're saying. Like, it's a harder game to play, but everybody's more gifted offensively. That's why scoring is easier. Everybody's more gifted. They can score in multiple ways. There's nobody that comes in and can only do one thing and be okay.
Like, guys are hitting contested shots at a high rate.
Think about that. Giannis is one of the most dominant players we've seen in a long time, right? But even him, they still say, oh, make him shoot. He got to shoot. He practices his jumper every single year and tries to get better at shooting every single year, because you can't keep doing the same thing. That's not how you win. But back then you could. I know Shaq, like, he was more of a power. So I'm not saying him. He's the most dominant player ever. I'm not saying Shaq. But other player, he could get to that same mid-range pull-up. Michael Jordan could do that every single play, and nobody would say anything. No one would be able to stop.
I mean, if he shoots over 50% from the field.
I'm saying, but if you guard Michael Jordan one-on-one, there's a difference. But now it's not just getting guarded. It's not getting guarded one-on-one. Back then, you were getting guarded one-on-one. Now, like y'all say, it's ISO ball. Yeah, but you still got people helping. You still got people sliding over. You still got double teams coming. They still collapse on you. There's a lot of different things that you.
But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter if it's a sky hook, if it's a step back, or if it's a fadeaway. If it's an unstoppable move, it's an unstoppable move. So if Jordan is in that paint hitting fadeaways, there's nothing you can do.
Because you can't help. Now, why do you think nobody does the sky hook anymore?
Because what I'm saying is, what would you do now if Jordan does fadeaways now and you run that second man? He's going to find the open person, and there's going to be somebody hitting wide open shots. Or he's going to kill you with the fadeaway. Pick your poison.
Okay. And what about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander? Pick your poison. He does the same exact thing. Gets to his mid-range and gets to his bucket. The same exact thing. The thing Michael Jordan does, we see it constantly now. Think about Devin Booker. Does the same thing. Gets to his mid-range shot and pulls his fade. It's the same.
James don't like Booker.
I don't like Book. I don't like Devin Booker, but I'm saying I can respect people scoring the basketball at a very high level. You have to have different counters and different moves, everything. Back then, you could do the same exact thing. Y'all talking about he got.
So you think Jordan had one move?
No, that's not what I'm saying. But people bring up that signature move thing. It's because he could do it all the time. You can't do stuff like that all the time. You can't keep going back to the same move.
So
like, think about his
are
favorite
we saying
player.
Kobe didn't have a bag?
Huh?
Are we saying Kobe didn't have a bag? Are we saying T-Mac
didn't
have a bag? Had more than one move.
Okay,
like,
yeah, I'm not. That's not what I'm saying. But I'm saying you could do the same thing. Kobe had a bag, but Kobe played after that time. Kobe was playing
drafted in '96.
Yeah, like that's
drafted
what I'm saying. Kobe was still playing. Kobe evolved his game. There's a difference. Jordan didn't have to because in that time it didn't matter.
You don't think Jordan evolved his game?
I know he did, but not to the level that they're at now. Kobe had to evolve to play at the level that we're at now. He had to mix up and get there. Jordan, that was before his time. So he didn't, how you going to like think about, oh, I got to do this if it didn't happen?
Jordan added muscle after they lost to Detroit and started playing in the post more. Like Jordan improved his 3-point percentage as his career went on.
How many threes did he take a game, bro? That's not the same as right now. That doesn't count right now.
It's not, but he improved his percentage.
Yeah, but now
from what?
You got players coming in the league as combs, can't do anything at all.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. That's
by the years going by, they shooting 40% from 3 now. They can bring the ball in the court now. They're passing the ball.
Development and scouting is better.
Jaylen Brown.
Yeah, Jaylen Brown. That's perfect.
Year. He gets better every time they say he can't do something, he gets better every single year. Right or wrong, Jeff? They said he couldn't shoot. What did he do? Learn how to shoot. They said he couldn't dribble the ball. He couldn't get his own shot. What did he do? Create his own shot. They say he couldn't use his left hand. What's he been doing this year? Using his left hand. There's a difference. Like he has to evolve because if he doesn't, he's out the league. Michael Jordan was at the best being who he was. He didn't necessarily have to change for anybody. There's a difference. Like, especially with the defense and the way the game is played today, there is a big gap between them and now. But I'm not taking away what they did back then, but stop trying to bring that into now and saying that those players are better than these players because they're not. Skill-wise, they're nowhere near. Like, I know they had their mentality and their tenacity and their whatever, but skill-wise, they can't hang right now. That's why you said Bird versus Tatum. Tatum's skill set poops on Larry Bird's. Larry Bird's
I can't agree with you with Bird. There's certain players that's exceptions. I can't agree with you with Bird.
But Larry Bird's bag was huge back then. But now his bag looks like this because everybody now can do more. That's what I'm saying.
Bird was getting triple doubles and stuff.
Back then, the dribblers and ball handlers y'all had back then, their bags were huge. You were like, oh my God. But now you
Bird
see
was clutch.
You put skill-wise, you put someone against, like, you take this and that's their bag. The best ball handler you can think of from back then. Whoever it is.
Steve Francis, Baron Davis had handles. AI had handles. I'm not like nobody can Stephon Marbury.
Even if he's too high, you can still put them against Kyrie Irving. Kyrie Irving is the greatest ball handler we've ever seen. Nobody can do what he does.
None of them are even better than Steph.
That's what I'm saying. Steph Curry. Chris Paul is the closest thing to it because he played in between.
But my question is this. Why are we excluding tenacity, heart, and the clutch factor? Why isn't that a part of the bag? I hear what you're saying.
Then LeBron should, if that's how you feel, then LeBron should be your GOAT. Because you're talking about clutch factor. LeBron has the most clutch moments out of anyone ever. He's number one.
He's played on the more super teams than anyone ever and been in more
we're saying the Bulls weren't a super team?
No, come on, bro. Jordan didn't handpick his players like LeBron has. LeBron has been the de facto GM. Why do you think he left Miami, bro? He left Miami because he couldn't be the GM and pull the strings the way Pat Riley was.
Because he wanted to win. That's what happened. But it's a different time now. You can leave now. Back then, you had to be loyal to your organization.
There's no free agency back then. Yeah,
there was no free agency.
That's a fact. That's
what I'm saying. It's different. It's a different time. He can do that.
I think Jordan would have left too.
Win. And now you have to. Like, think about it. Damian Lillard, he stayed loyal that whole time. And he still ended up leaving because he wanted to do something bigger. You can't do that now. Back then you could keep that same team and still go to war. Now you can't go to war. Your team diminishes. People make more money. People want to leave. People want to make more money. People see their eyes get big when they think about money, or their eyes get big when they think about, oh, I can win a championship with that team, so I'm gonna go play with them. You keep saying these super teams. Jordan had the best shooting guard, the best small forward on the team, and on his team. You had the two of the best top at your position. Michael Jordan, the best shooting guard in the NBA, and Scottie Pippen was the best small forward in the NBA.
Okay.
And it wasn't close. And then
that's
you had
one player. That's
forward.
one player he's playing with.
And you
keep including Jordan. That's one player. You're saying Pippen. Now, do we want to go down the list of all the great players LeBron has played with?
What about Rodman? Okay. But
he had him for 3 years.
Because okay, but you can't do. And what did he do every single year?
He won. That's two players.
Exactly.
That's two players.
Yes.
Now, do we want to do LeBron?
That's two all NBA players. All NBA every year. Defensive player of the year.
He had the best players at that time. There's not as many great players.
He had two players
than there is now. Now
there's not as many great.
It's a lot more all-star caliber players than it was back then. A lot
more greater players than there is back then.
Yeah, he had all the players.
Like, who was Michael Jordan?
I don't want to go down that list.
Of course, LeBron played with more. There were
way more.
It weren't options.
But there's also more players to play with.
Yeah. No, we're not doing that.
Tony Kukoc is a Hall of Famer.
You said
DJ Armstrong was an All-Star once
because he was on that team.
How many times, Jeff?
Because of the team.
DJ Armstrong, one-time All-Star. Horace Grant, one-time All-Star.
You keep naming these bums.
Ron Harper.
Jordan dominated with him. He dominated with people you call bums.
Okay, and what did LeBron do? And what did LeBron do?
Dominated.
Okay, and what did LeBron do?
LeBron played with D Wade. He played with Chris Bosh. He played with Kyrie, the guy you said was the greatest.
He didn't make Chris Bosh. He didn't make Chris Bosh good.
Chris Bosh was 2010 guy before that. He was already good, sir. He was 2010. He was a franchise player in Toronto.
He was an empty stats guy before he got to Miami.
Yeah, he was empty stats.
He didn't do anything before that.
That's still 2010 guy though. That was still 2010 guy.
Stop. Bro, so was Valanciunas.
Was just this monster.
Valanciunas was a 2010 guy. So what? Valanciunas is
Chris Bosh is better than Horace Grant was. So continue, James.
Yes, he was. He was.
And then we got Kyrie, the greatest handle that we've ever seen. He played with him. We got Kevin Love,
who is Kyrie? Okay, who is Kyrie without LeBron James? A great player.
The greatest handle we've ever seen.
He's a great player. You can be the greatest ball handler we ever seen and still not be at the top. We don't matter.
Hey, some people was arguing that he should have been top 75. I never felt that way, but there was some people that was arguing that.
I don't think he should.
And you said Kevin Love too, right, James?
Yeah, who was arguably the best.
Kevin Love was Kevin Love.
He was the best power forward in the game.
He was the best. He was the best power forward when he was on the Timberwolves. When he went to the Cavs, he was not that guy. He was not that guy. And why are we talking about Kevin Love like Tim Duncan still wasn't playing? Stop doing that. He was not the best. Tim Duncan was.
No. It was a Blake Griffin. It was LaMarcus Aldridge. It was Kevin Love. Those are the best at that time in the early 2010s. And Zebo.
Okay.
Zebo.
And then when did Kevin Love go to the Cavs?
In what was it 2015?
Okay, and what did he do ever since he went to the Cavs? He was a normal
moments there.
Grab rebounds. He was grab rebounds.
That's moments there.
Yeah, everybody has moments.
He was the third option. What was he supposed to do? He did what he was told to do.
How do you go from being the best?
And played great defense on Steph in Game 7. Like,
That's
don't forget that.
Y'all keep talking about these empty stats. He put up them weak ass empty stats on the what's that team? The Timberwolves. The Timberwolves were poop.
He averaged 26 and 13 the year before he got traded there. So continue, James. There's more players. Continue.
Oh man, who else he played with? He played with Anthony Davis. What are we saying about him?
Anthony Davis now, yes. Anthony Davis is an elite player.
I don't think you understand. Like, all right,
but you have to it's a different league now.
I don't think you get
how many different players are naming that are all on different teams thriving.
Yes, like
that's what we're saying. It's a better league now. Those players are better. There's more better players. Every single person you name is on a different team or went to a different team and played good.
So let me put it to you like this.
And D Wade.
Like, so
what we're trying to say is, like, I'm not giving you real numbers. So say 1996, right? We're saying there's only 10 elite players in 1996. Now there's 30 elite players. Those aren't exact numbers. I'm not, But I'm saying Jordan had the majority. Like, if you level it out mathematically, he had just as much as LeBron did because there's better players now. But back then, say there's only 10 elite players, he had 3 of them. Like that's what we're trying. Those aren't real numbers, obviously,
no.
but that's what we're trying to say.
Okay, so I get what you're saying. So the question I would ask you is, are you saying there's 30 elite players now because visually you enjoy watching the way that they play? Their style is more appeasing?
No, because there's a bunch of players
Because-
I don't like.
I'll say
Devin
this.
Booker. I don't like him, but he's an elite player. Donovan Mitchell, I for the life of me do not like him, but he's an elite player. There's Trae
How
Young.
is he elite? Why is
Trae
Donovan
Young.
Mitchell elite?
Look at what he does.
I don't think he's elite, bro.
Why don't you? Look at his stats. You want to bring up stats
Because-
so much about Michael Jordan. Look at what he does. You can't
you
take
think-
that away from him.
Do you think Dominique
I'm not a
Wilkins was
fan.
elite?
Huh?
In
You
his
think
time,
Dominique
bro.
Wilkins was elite?
Dominique Wilkins was good for his time, yes, but now he would be a nobody.
So what I'm telling you
He'd be a
is,
sometime all-star. If he played right now, he would be a sometime all-star. That's what I'm saying. He was a top player in the league at that time. The top players in that league, if you put them in the NBA right now, they wouldn't be top players, is what I'm saying. That's why I'm saying the skill level is different. It's
I
a
don't agree
different
with that.
game. It's
What
a
was
different
James?
game.
What was your point, James?
my point is, I think we're throwing around that word elite a little too loosely. I don't think some of the people that you guys say are elite, I don't think they're elite. They haven't displayed it on the biggest stage. It's cute. It's cute to get busy in the preseason. It's cool to get busy in the regular season. But when the lights are the brightest, the reason why I joke with Tajon about Brunson. I call him Ball Hog Brunson. But one thing, like you, to your point, he gets better every year. And when the playoffs come, the lights aren't too bright for him. Donovan Mitchell, I've seen him shrivel under those lights. So I can't call him elite.
Yeah, but I've also seen him shine under those lights. Let's not forget the bubble. Let's not forget
Round one?
let's not forget the bubble. Like, he wasn't cooking. Like, him and Jamal Murray weren't going at it. Let's not act like he wasn't doing that with that
Recently,
team.
it hasn't been good though. Like past few playoff runs, have not been good.
I get that, but the playoffs is harder to get into now. There's more teams that you have to go up against. There's more.
That's true. That's true.
There's more.
There's a
players that you
play-in.
have to
What are
play
you
against.
talking about?
All right, here's
There's
the
a
thing about that
play-in.
though.
Jeff can
Like-
explain better than me because he understands what I'm saying. Jeff can explain it better than I can.
There is more parity from 1 to 10 than it was back then. Because back then in the Eastern Conference, it was teams with like 34 wins getting into the playoffs and stuff. So it's better. Like what we see with Paolo and Orlando, just as an example, they got 36 wins. He's a second-year player. Back in our time, it wasn't second-year players really leading their teams to a record like that.
That's what I'm saying. It's because it's a different skill level. Like, the players that are coming out now are at a different skill level than players back then.
I think
That's-
development and scouting is better.
Yeah, that's what I'm
now
saying.
than back then,
Development
too.
is better. Like, of course, it's just like everything. Like, like that's just how the world works. The longer things, like the stuff that y'all used to be accustomed to back then, just say a phone. I have an iPhone in my hand. There used to be flip phones and pagers and stuff like that. Everything evolves. The game of basketball evolved. The players now are better than they were then. I'm not taking away what they did back then. What they did back then is cool, but you can't compare them to people now. They don't hang. That's what I'm saying. Everybody now can do what everybody back then could do and some. There's a difference because the game of basketball evolved. It's not the same. The game got better. People started learning more things. They started trying new things. They started bending the rule book a little bit and figuring out, I can do this. Like that 0 step. That's been in the rule book for a long time, but nobody thought about that. They didn't think about, I can spin if I do a hezo, I can take as many steps as I want and get to my spot as long as I don't have control of the ball. There's a difference. Like there's different things that go on that they wouldn't that's different. That's more advanced. I'm not saying because back then they had nothing to compare it to. You can't be like, how was I supposed to do that? They didn't even know they could do that. But now that we do, you can't compare them to them because they're on a higher level.
So basically, you're saying that if I'm understanding you correctly, you're saying we can't use that phrase all-time great. There's no such thing as an all-time great.
No,
that word
you
means
can
nothing.
say all-time great. I'm not saying you can't say all-time great. You can say all-time great because for their time, they did what nobody else could do. Like,
That's not what all-time great means, though.
I know, but Jordan,
All-time.
no, yeah, but that's solidified in everything. That's solidified in history. That's all time because it's solidified in history. Because at that time it was different. Now you don't see people. Curry's in #1 in 3-pointers made. #1 in 3-point, like 3-pointers, right? But we still say Larry Bird is a top shooter, right? We still put Larry Bird in that conversation because even though his sample size is smaller, we know at that time he was an elite shooter. But even though his elite shooter doesn't compare to Steph Curry's, he's still an elite shooter because he played in that time. And that time it was not as common. Now it's common. Because right now you can take Patty Mills and say he's a better shooter than Larry Bird. But it doesn't matter because it's a different time. Patty Mills doesn't compare to Larry Bird because Larry Bird is an all-time great. He did something that wasn't going on at that time. Now it's normal. They take more threes than they could take more threes than twos in a game, and nobody would flip out. That's what I'm saying. It's a different, like the game evolved. So that's why I'm saying their players now are better than they are, but that doesn't mean that back then they're not greats or they're not amazing players. It's just a different game now. That's why I say don't compare the two. That's why I say it's kind of hard comparison. That's why I always say that same thing about DeMar DeRozan being Michael Jordan, being the same as Michael Jordan, because it's a different game. The evolution of the game is different. There's a bunch of people that can hang in that same play, have that same play style and play that same similar way, even though it's different. They're two different people, but like the game evolved. That's what I'm trying to say.
I'm gonna let James get the final point before I let him go. But any final points you would like to say? I do agree that Gen Z might have to stop going back and reaching with the criticizing the former generation as far as highlights, because nobody really does that in the NFL. Because somebody tweeted it out yesterday. They was like, they don't see 12-year-olds on NFL Twitter going back saying Barry Sanders wasn't a good running back and stuff like that.
The NFL is different. It's a different sport. You know what I mean? Like that sport is different. Like,
yeah,
there's only so much you can do with football. Like, there's only so much you can do. Running backs, they're gonna grab the ball, juke, cut, put their head down, get up the field. They're gonna do.
That's what James said earlier. Like, it's still only one way to make a basket. Like, despite all the different stylistics.
That's what I'm saying. Football, there's only one way to run the ball. Basketball, there's not one way to shoot the ball. There's not one way to dribble the ball. They're two different sports. You can't compare.
Respect goes both ways. Like, the older generation needs to stop criticizing how bad this generation was. Maybe they wouldn't react the way they would if it wasn't for the constant criticism. James, I'll let you get the final point on this before we slide to the next topic.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. It was a dope conversation. I enjoyed it. No, I agree with a lot of what you guys said. The skill set from the younger players is undeniable. I think, and it's just my opinion, I think the reserve players, 6 through 12, 6 through 15 today, are a lot better than the previous generation. But for me, I just think it comes down to how we define all-time great. I just define it a little differently. I define it as you drop this player in any era, and they're going to be who they are. Now, obviously, I'm not talking about the dudes that played in black and white. Or
we don't talk about them. If they didn't have color, we don't talk about them.
Right. But I think an all-time great is somebody 20 years from now, 20 years ago, you drop them in and they do what they do.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that's understandable. I take that.
Perfect. Definitely appreciate having you on, man.
Thanks for having me. Y'all be cool.
You too, man.